Las Vegas.
What's going on, y'all? I want to thank you if you're tuning in. I'm your host, Paco, and you're listening to Occupy the Media. Today is Tuesday, May the 29th, bright and early here on the West Coast in sunny Pasadena, California. Again, I want to thank you if you're tuning in. Don't forget that I am on every day, Monday through Friday. 10 to 12 noon Eastern Time and 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time as well. Shout out to you if you're in the chat. Shout out to Richie and Andrews over in the chat room. Also, you can join us on RonPaulTribune.com. Click on the chat room, our voice chat, and you should catch me right there as well. Okay, so today we got some headlines we're going to jump into. First, some announcements here we got. What do we have going on today? Let me scroll back up here on my page. Okay, don't forget today to vote in the Texas primary. If you're in Texas, don't forget to vote for Ron Paul today. Also, if you haven't donated, RonPaul2012.com as usual. We definitely need to keep donating to the Ron Paul campaign and keep this liberty movement going. Also, South Dakota is having a Liberty Money Bomb. I think that's this weekend or Saturday, May 26th. Oh, that might have been last weekend. Okay, so it looks like that passed already. But they do have a website, South Dakota for Liberty.com, I believe it is. So if you guys want to check that out or still help out, I'm pretty sure they'll still take it. So it looks like I might have caught that one a little too late. But that was over at the Daily Paul. So let's go ahead and get rid of that here. Okay, what else do we have going on? Now, I'm going to talk about this a little later, but it looks like Mitt Romney is going to clinch the nomination today. Now, we know it isn't legitimate, and we know that it isn't right, but at the same time, we know the GOP establishment. And I believe there's 150-some delegates up for grabs today, and they're going to give that to Romney. And there's already articles talking about that, and we're going to jump to that, let's see here, in a minute. First, I want to talk about a couple headlines here at the bradblog.com. Paul supporters robbed at county convention in Georgia win some justice against establishment GOP. So I guess we do have some good news here. Let's see here. This week, Lori Bone contacted us with some very good news. As you'll see in her press release below, based on irregularities seen on the video at the outrageous Clark County convention, the state of delegates from Clark County has now been summarily tossed out and disallowed from participating in the state convention due to rules violations that disqualified the entire group. That victory comes despite the Clark County establishment's bogus slate of delegates being defended by both Georgia's Republican Secretary of State as well as the Secretary of the State Republican Party, according to Bone. Here is the complete release sent to the Brad blog by Bone earlier this week, along with the message, "I still can't believe we won." All right, and the release says here, Clark County loses their delegates at the 2012 Georgia State Republican Convention. Columbus, Georgia, May 19th, 2012. Loud cheers and applause were heard after Credentials Committee Chairman B.J. Van Gundy announced that the entire Clark County delegation to the 2012 Georgia State Republican Convention would not be allowed to vote or participate in the convention due to rules violations that disqualified their entire group. Among those representing Clark County at the convention were Secretary of State Brian Kemp and Secretary of the Georgia Republican Party John Padgett, two well-known and influential members of the Georgia Republican Party. Other prominent local GOP members affected by this decision included Clark County Chairman Matt Brewster and several members of the Clark County Executive Committee. The entire delegation was asked to leave the convention floor and members lost their delegate status. As a result, Clark County voters had no representatives at the convention. The ruling was in response to an appeal regarding the events that took place at the March 10th Clark County Convention, where delegates were elected to represent Clark County at the district and state conventions. Several of the complainants were themselves delegates or alternates to the convention, but fought to remove the entire delegation because they were not properly elected. Okay, during the March 10th county convention, Chairman Matt Brewster ignored calls from the floor to count the votes and push through nominations against the will of the voters present. A video posted to YouTube depicting the events clearly showed that a majority in attendance were ignored by the chairman. Okay, and it goes on to say here by Chairman Brewster, the video subsequently went viral and the allegations of fraud were reported in local, national, and international news stories. Lori Bone stated, "What happened in Clark County was wrong. Our hope is that this ruling set a clear precedent and will stop future chairs from employing similar tactics. We are very thankful," Republican candidate for Athens House District 118 added, quote, we are very, very thankful to the Credentials Committee for hearing our complaint and ruling in our favor. Carter Kessler, Republican candidate for Athens House District 118, added, quote, "I've heard it spun that this was a victory for the Liberty Movement or for the Ron Paul folks, but it wasn't. It was a victory for the integrity of the process. This decision reaffirms the party's commitment to fair, open, and honest elections. While all of that is clearly good news for the Paul supporters and for the idea of democratic rule in general, it's a pity that due to the arrogance and outrageous behavior of the GOP establishment in Clark County, Georgia, Republican voters there were not represented at the state convention and may not be represented at all at the national convention in Tampa." Bone tells us, however, that they aren't through yet. Quote, "Other portions of our appeal are ongoing and currently rest at the district level," she says. "We are fighting to have the chairman removed and other members disciplined in any way available. Good for them. It's great to see folks standing up, using their voices, and insisting upon their democracy to win, even against some of the most powerful people in the state, or at least the people who may still think they're most powerful." And you guys can check out the video on YouTube. I mean, that was crazy. In Clark County, they did a video explaining what was going on and how they got cheated and how the chairman just totally bypassed them and disregarded them, like they weren't there, didn't exist. So this is over at bradblog.com. This came out on May 25th. Another article from bradblog.com that was out earlier this month, in case you didn't catch it. The GOP in California hired professional con artists who turned in thousands of fraudulent voter registrations and $50,000 bounty scheme. The head of a firm which was paid some $50,000 by the Republican Party in Sacramento to sign up new Republican voters this year has, quote, "an extensive criminal history, including a prison sentence for stealing from a family she befriended and buying a van with funds stolen from a youth agency." Moreover, one of the employees that, quote, professional con artist Monica Harris, the head of the GOP's Momentum Political Services, hired to work with her at the firm where she was paid her Republican registration, recently pleaded guilty to fraud charges and a multi-million-dollar mortgage scheme. The growing scandal, all but ignored by those on the right who professionally pretend that Democrats and Acorn are stealing elections, underscores yet again the extent to which the Republican Party is willing to go in order to win elections, even while falsely accusing Democrats of undermining them. The new information on Harris and Momentum Political Services comes from a report this week from the Sacramento Bee. We detailed the allegations against Momentum Political Services as they emerged earlier this month, and as Sacramento Register Jill, hold on, I just lost my place there. As Sacramento Register Jill Levine turned over some 7,500 registration forms, her office determined to be fraudulent, over to the Secretary of State's Election Fraud Unit for investigation. As we noted at the time, the GOP voter registration were turned into the Sacramento Registrar's office with fake addresses, voter names that don't exist, duplicate social security numbers, and party affiliations that seem to have been changed by someone to Republican. And just by the way, when I came over here and moved to California, I was registered as a libertarian, and I do not remember registering as a libertarian. So, probably more shenanigans. Anyways, a few days later, we interviewed Levine on our KPFK radio program. She confirmed the invalid registrations reportedly turned in by the GOP hired firm. At the heart of the scandal, other than the extraordinary hypocrisy of the GOP inaccurately accusing Democrats of voter fraud. Anyways, I'm Parker, your host. We'll be back after the break.